My name is Lisa Sakos. Thank you so much for being here today to talk about this very interesting topic, mindful eating, eating with intention. I am here with the Health Coach Collaborative and with Heather Creamer on the line as well. We both represent this school, and I'll talk a little bit about that briefly before we get into the topic. But today's topic is mindful eating. Food is supposed to be a wonderful part of our lives. It's meant to be enjoyed. It is meant to be enjoyed. That's why we have taste buds to experience all the flavors: sweet, salty, savory, sour, astringent. We want to love our food, but our fast paced lifestyle means that we're distracted. We're not paying attention to our food. We're not paying attention to what we're eating, how much we're eating, or even how we feel afterwards. So it becomes a less enjoyable experience. It becomes a mindless act that we so often do in a hurry. We scramble to get food on the table. We scramble to get it into our tummies. We scramble to clean up afterwards so that we can move on with our lives. And there are consequences to that. The consequences are that we often overeat. We often experience digestive difficulties, and we don't enjoy or get the full enjoyment from our food. So, in today's session, you're going to learn simple practices, simple ways to practice mindful eating to foster a deeper appreciation and connection with your food. So, thank you so much for being here today. I'm going to try and wrap it up in about a half hour so you can get on with your day. I appreciate all the time that you are spending with us. And as I said, if you have any questions, feel free to enter them into the chat or to reach out to one of us afterwards. And we're more than happy to answer your questions. So before we get into the topic, I just wanted to point out that this month, up until March 1st, we have on special our Natural Nutrition Essentials certificate. This is a bundle of 3 of our most popular courses: Foundations in Natural Nutrition, Digestive Health, and the Microbiome, which is currently being updated to launch in a few weeks, the new and improved version, and Foundations of Personalized Meal Planning. So if you were considering adding some nutrition consulting to your existing practice, or just learning about a little bit more about nutrition and how to plan meals for your own family, how to improve your digestive system and your microbiome, this is a really good place to start. You can save $250 on this bundle this month. So use code SAVE250 at the checkout, and our website is listed at the bottom there. Also, I just wanted to say that today, Nourishing Menopause actually goes to print. This is a book that both Heather and I have been working on with the amazing Andrea Donsky for the last 2 years. It's been an incredible learning curve. I have learned so much as I'm going through menopause myself, and this is such a game changer for me and for women everywhere. The book talks about how to eat and how to balance your hormones while you're going through perimenopause and ultimately menopause and then beyond. So it's a beautiful book. It's very clearly laid out, very practical. It makes a lot of sense to a lot of women. It outlines more than 103 symptoms of perimenopause and menopause, most of them which we wouldn't even think of. I had no idea, again, until I started researching the book with Andrea. And Andrea, Heather, and I are now creating a new coaching program for the Health Coach Collaborative. It's coming out later this spring. Certified Perimenopause and Menopause Health Coach. That's the designation. So if this is something you are interested in, stay tuned for more information or send us an email and we'll get you on the waiting list. And if you are interested in checking out the book, you can scan the QR code. It's open for pre-sale, but you can check out a few pages and get an idea of what is in the book. So that's all I wanted to say. Now let's get into our topic. So let's talk about mindful eating and what it is. It is a form of mindfulness. It's not different from any other form of mindfulness. It encourages you to focus on the present moment, to focus on the food that you're eating. It's a simple way to quiet the mind and be fully present, not only when you're eating, but also when you're shopping for groceries and when you're preparing your meal. And it's an incredible way to connect with your food for a more joyful eating experience. What does it mean? Eating mindfully means being fully attentive to your food at every point in the process. It's not just about what you eat. It's about how you're eating and how quickly you're eating, when you're eating, the time of the day, why you're eating. Are you eating because it's lunchtime? Are you eating out of boredom? Are you eating because the kids have gone to sleep? Uh, Multiple reasons why we eat. Is it a holiday? Where you're eating, on the couch, at the dining room table, in your car, as I've often been guilty of doing. Of course, what you're eating, and then ultimately how much you're eating. By eating mindfully, you're slowing down and you're making eating an intentional act instead of an automatic one. So when you're eating mindful, oh, yes, exactly what I just said. Okay, what do the studies show? Because there has been quite a bit of research on eating, mindful eating in different aspects of it, like the environment, the who, what, when, where, why, etc. And some of the studies that I thought were very interesting, I liked this one. I work with many clients who work for organizations. They have full-time jobs. A lot of them are just sitting at their desk all day long. And this is an interesting stat that I like to mention to them. A study that came out a few years ago showed that in 2019, when you're eating while you're on your smartphone, we tend to eat more calories at that meal. So this study found that people ate 15% more calories, and they didn't catch that cue that said, I'm not hungry anymore. So they ate until they were full or even beyond fullness simply because they weren't paying attention. Another study that was done on children found that if they were eating while they were watching television, they tended to make worse choices. They wanted to eat foods that were not as healthy when they sat and ate in front of the TV versus when they were eating at the table with their families. So, distracted eating makes it harder to tune into what and how much we're eating, whereas eating mindfully encourages us to be present with our food and enjoy food with all of our senses. Ultimately, the studies on mindful eating have found that in general, we have more control over how much and what we're eating, more awareness, and less mindless eating. And to understand exactly what mindful eating is, it's important to know what mindless eating is because many of us are eating mindlessly so often. And as I go through these slides, uh, please understand we're not expected to eat mindfully every time we eat. Obviously, that's impractical. It's not going to happen. But as a person who struggled with my weight, my health, my body fat for many of my early years, when I learned about mindful eating, it was an absolute game changer for me. I would eat, low fat, calorie restricted foods, thinking those were good for me because they would encourage my body to drop weight, which was causing health problems. That was absolutely not the case. When I learned about mindful eating, I slowed down. I started eating foods rather than just eating like a green pepper in a salad, for example, and smothered with dressing. I remember biting into a green pepper, just a plain raw, freshly washed green pepper, and allowing myself to really experience the flavors. It burst into my mouth. It was such an extraordinary experience. I did the same with a tomato. I did the same with other vegetables over that period of time, just to experience the taste, the flavor of each and every food I was eating on a regular basis individually, apart from all the other stuff, apart from the sauces and dressings and seasonings, etc. And it was such a game changer because I got to connect with the food, to understand its flavors, and it actually made me a better cook afterwards because knowing exactly what each food tasted like helped me make better decisions when I was preparing my food. So that was an experience that I would encourage you to try as well if you haven't done it already. And it was honestly a brand new experience. I don't think I had ever eaten a green pepper on its own, except for maybe a slice or two at a buffet, dipped into some sort of like a creamy dip, right? So give that a try when you have an opportunity. Okay, so let's get back to this. So mindless eating is where a lot of us are most of the time. Here we're ignoring our body's signals. We're eating beyond the point of fullness, right? Okay, so has this ever happened to you? Can you identify with some of these situations? Can you think of a time when you continued to eat so much that your stomach hurt, even though you knew you would regret it afterwards? I'm having flashbacks to driving to Ponderosa in university and eating so much that I had to unbutton my pants and I had to sit in my chair for at least an hour afterwards because I couldn't even get up to drive. My stomach hurt so much. That was the old days when, before I knew any of this stuff, right? When you eat, do you multitask? Oh my gosh, all of us are guilty of this, right? You're checking your email, you're checking your Facebook page, you're watching television, you're cleaning the kitchen, you're at your desk doing your work. Do you know that more than 33% of us eat lunch at our desks? Yeah, lunch at our desk every single day. I mean, that's tragic that we can't even break away from our desk for 5 or 10 minutes just to be able to eat and enjoy our meal. It doesn't take that long to eat. This when I do this, which is very rare because I started noticing that if I was eating at my desk, I would lift my fork to take another bite and there was nothing on my fork. And I didn't even realize that I had finished eating my food, which meant that I was still hungry afterwards and ultimately went back into the kitchen to find something else to eat, which means I was overeating. Do you ever use food as a pick me up after a long day when you're bored, when you're tired, or when you're stressed? Very common complaint from my clients. They'll tell me that they get home from work and while they're preparing dinner, they're thinking about something stressful pertaining to work or something outside of work. And they're finding that they're eating while they're preparing dinner. They're eating cookies or crackers or just snacking while they're preparing their meal. And oftentimes we end up eating just as many calories before dinner as during dinner, which is not good for our long term health, obviously, right? Do TV commercials about food prompt you to get up and visit the kitchen for a snack, even though you just had a really good dinner and are feeling perfectly satisfied, right? Mindful eating stops all of this. It forces us or causes us to question the reason why we're eating, the reason why we're getting up to have another bite when we're perfectly satisfied, and especially to recognize the cues, the physical cues, the emotional cues, the physiological cues, and the responses. So I'm not sure if I got through all of that, but I think so. So that is the difference between mindless and mindful eating. Now, all around us are triggers that can cause us to eat mindlessly and ignore our hunger cues. Most of us eat either because we're hungry or because we're triggered by, usually by one of our senses. You see food, you walk by a bakery, again, walking by a bakery, you smell food or you can taste it, or someone, your next door neighbor is barbecuing and you can hear the sizzling of the steak on the barbecue. It might make you hungry. So, oftentimes it's an external trigger, but it can also be from an internal trigger, like when our mind tells us to eat, or our schedule or our emotions tell us to eat. When you're actually hungry, your body will tell you. When your blood glucose, your blood sugar is too low, the glycogen that's stored in your liver for energy, it gets broken down into glucose. If that glycogen is depleted, your nervous system is going to transmit this information to your brain that causes you to feel hunger. So, outside of actual hunger, some of the triggers that cause us to eat can include your senses, again, the sight, smell, sound, taste, or even texture of food. I gave a few examples already, like the smell of fresh baked bread, the sight of chocolate on your colleague's desk, the sound of food grilling on a barbecue, or if you take, oh, I'm so guilty of this. If you take a bite of something like a cookie, it makes you want to eat the whole package. I make these really healthy cookies for my kids. And sometimes, even though I know it's too late for me to eat, I'll say, I'm just going to have a bite, one bite. And then eventually I go back to eat the whole rest of it, right? External triggers like time are also really important to be aware of because we have our days so scheduled out, right? Lunchtime. So most people I work with, they can only eat their lunch at 12 o'clock or at 1 o'clock, whether or not they're hungry. They have to eat at that time, otherwise, they may not have another opportunity. The time of the year, holidays, we tend to overeat during Thanksgiving, during various holidays, Christmas, etc. Even cold days cause us to eat more because our metabolism actually increases on colder days. So these are all things to consider. The Japanese have an interesting um, word, actually. Let me see if I can get this right. Kuchisabishi. Kuchisabishi. It's a Japanese term that literally translates to lonely mouth. And that refers to the feeling of wanting to eat when you're not actually hungry, usually because of boredom or loneliness. I love this because it highlights the emotional connection that we have with eating and encourages a more compassionate understanding of our eating habits. Having an actual word for this just goes to show how many people have to deal with this now and again. So keep that one handy. Now, there's a helpful tool that can help you determine if you're eating in response to your body's needs or for some other reason, and it's called the Hunger and Satisfaction Scale. It rates hunger and satisfaction from 1 to 9. So it'll help you check in with your hunger and recognize eating triggers. When I'm working with clients, sometimes I'll have them print out a scale like this and keep it on the fridge, or if they're at work, keep it on their desk so that when they're about to eat, they can ask themselves, what is my hunger level? Is it really time for me to eat, or am I eating for some other reason that is not a biological reason? Okay, so let's take a look at the scale, 1 to 9. So, number one is you're starving and you need to eat right now. Okay, we don't want to be eating at this stage. You should have eaten a long time ago if this is how you're feeling. Obviously, sometimes it's out of our hands. You're on a long drive, or you're stuck in a meeting, or there's multitude of reasons why we can't eat when we need to. But this is number one here. We want to avoid this as much as possible. Why? Well, I think we know because we tend to overeat. We tend to make very poor choices. Going to the grocery store when you're feeling like this is already a poor choice because you know that you're going to buy things that were not on your grocery list. And you know that you're going to eat some of those things even before you get to the checkout. So we want to avoid this. Number two is also not a good state to be eating in because you're too hungry and you get to the point where you feel irritable and unfocused. Now, here your blood glucose levels are probably quite low, which is a sign already that your blood glucose needs some work to balance. So, if you're feeling like this on a regular basis, then pay attention to that. Maybe get your blood sugar levels checked with your doctor just to make sure that you are not in a pre-diabetic state or dealing with some insulin resistance, if that's, again, something that you're frequently experiencing. Number three, you're hungry and you feel a physical sense of hunger. What does that mean? It means you can feel your stomach just gently starting to turn, right? You've got a little bit of groaning in your stomach and a little grumbling, and so that's when you're ready to eat. You still have full control over how much you eat, what you eat, and you can wait to make good choices instead of running to the vending machine and grabbing something unhealthy. 4 is also good. You're slightly hungry. You'd like to eat, but you can wait a bit longer. 5, you're not hungry, but you're not yet satisfied. So here you're eating, and now you are eating, and you can still eat a lot more. So you're probably like 60-40 full here, or maybe 50-50. 6 is this is our gold standard. This is where we want to be when we're eating. So you've eaten, your stomach is about 80% full, but you're not feeling full yet. You don't have that feeling of, oh, I've eaten too much. Now I feel not very good because I've had way too much to eat. So we want to avoid that, which is number 7, number 8, and number 9, where we're becoming uncomfortably full. So 3 to 6 is the sweet spot. That's the zone where we want to be when we're about to eat or when we're eating. So print off uh, that's, or if you want to, if you haven't taken a screenshot of it, or you can also probably find something like this online. It's a handy scale to have. And if you're working with clients, I like to give that to my clients, as I said. So the goal of mindful eating, of course, is not just paying attention to what you're eating, but also how you're eating. Of course, what you're eating is of ultimate importance to your health, but whether you're eating vegetables, oatmeal, cookies, or French fries. By truly paying attention to the food that you're eating and how you eat it, you will have a very different eating experience. So now that you know how to recognize your hunger cues, your hunger level, and when you might be eating mindlessly, let's explore some ways to practice mindful eating. The first one, before you eat, set the stage. This is so important. Multitasking and eating is a recipe for not being able to listen to your body. It's impossible. Eliminate your distractions whenever you can. Again, this is not going to happen 100% of the time. Turn off the TV, put down your phone, eat in silence, and whenever you can, eat alone in silence to fully immerse yourself in the eating experience. And this is something that I practiced when I first learned about mindful eating. And again, it was part of my weight loss journey, but also my journey to get healthy. And the very first stop on the road to me becoming a nutrition consultant. So I remember I was living with my family at the time, and I would go into a different room. I know they didn't appreciate that all the time, but I needed to do it. I would go into a different room and just shut the door. So I was by myself. It was just me and my food. And I'd really focus on the flavors, the textures, the sounds my crunching and my munching was were making. It took me a little longer to eat, but it needed to happen. Now I didn't do this very often. It might have been once a week for a while until my body got used to it and I got used to it. So when you get a chance, even if it's just once, that's okay. Give it a try. So when you're distracted, it's so much more difficult to listen to your body's signals about food and all of your other body's needs. When you can, or maybe try this at your next meal, try single tasking and just eating with no other distractions except maybe the people that you're having a meal with and enjoying conversation with. Before you eat, take 3 deep breaths. This is so wonderful for multiple reasons. So, we know that when you're eating while you're distracted, it can cause you to eat more or mindlessly. And when you're eating while working, driving, watching an exciting show on TV, watching the news, your body is actually feeling stressed. It's on alert. You've gone into fight or flight. Now, your nervous system has two states. One is fight or flight, where you're ready to go, and the other one is rest and digest. And there's a reason why those two are paired together, rest and digest. You can't be in both states at the same time. So either you're in fight or flight or you're in rest and digest. And in order to properly and thoroughly digest your food, you have to be in the rest and digest. So if you're stressed, when you're driving, you know that your life is in your hands. You know, you're driving and a tanker trailer can cut you off at any time, or you can get into an accident, or there's so much to be aware of when you're driving. You're not in rest and digest. When you're watching the news, especially right now, you're not in rest and digest. When you're watching the Olympics, you're not in rest and digest. When you are in a hurry because you're rushing to go off to work in the morning, you know, any of those states, working at your desk, you're not paying attention. Again, you're not in rest and digest, which means that you will not be able to digest your food properly. Thankfully, it's super easy to switch into the rest and digest mode, and it involves your breath. Taking 3 deep breaths will cause your parasympathetic state to kick in and allow the digestive process to begin. So do it with me. That's 1, 2, 3. That's it. Now I can already feel my body changing. Can you hear it in my voice? My voice is lower already. It's amazing how quickly you can switch from one state to the next. So this is such an easy practice to get into. Starting at your very next snack or meal, 3 deep breaths, and you can do this whenever you're feeling a little bit anxious. And if you can practice this every time you eat, eventually it'll become second nature. Now, another option that's very similar to this is to pause for a moment before you eat to appreciate your food. It can be pausing to pray, to say grace, or just to think about everything and everyone that it took to bring that meal to your table. You can silently express your gratitude for the farmers, for the grocery store personnel, for all of those who grew the food, for who stocked the shelves, who planted and harvested the raw ingredients, you know. So we're so disconnected from our food. So if it's easier for you to take a moment to appreciate all that went into the meal, then that's a great option too. Or, like I said, taking a moment to just be thankful in general for your life. That's a really great exercise. And again, it helps to put you into the parasympathetic state. Now, use all of your senses when you eat because food tastes different when you use all of your senses, when you're fully engaged and fully focused. And savoring means taking the time to choose foods that you like and that would satisfy you, right? We can't always do that. Sometimes eating is just a means to an end, and that's okay too. But when you have an opportunity, do your best with it. Pick foods that you like, and also try and make the presentation as beautiful as possible. The Japanese say that you eat with your eyes first, so give them a show. Admire your food, admire the colors, the shapes. How is one pepper different from another? How is one grain of rice different from another? How many variations can you see? You know, this will slow you down, right? It will take longer to eat when you're really focused on your food. And that's using your sense of sight with a sense of smell. Obviously, you know, smell impacts the way that a food tastes, and hopefully it enhances it, right? Because those two senses are always partnered up at mealtime. So add some beautiful scents to your food. Open up your spice cabinet and add as many, you know, different spices that are obviously suitable for the meal that you're eating. Make it fragrant if you can, and it'll make your food experience so much more enjoyable. We obviously know about taste and really savor the flavors. We're going to talk about this again in just a moment, so I'm going to skip over this. And touch is a fun one too. Now, when I first started studying nutrition, one of my instructors encouraged our class to play with our food. Now as a mom, oh my gosh, I'd be horrified if my kids were playing with their food just because I know that I'm the one who has to clean up the mess. But at the time, I actually did embrace this idea. I would put my hands right into the mashed sweet potatoes and feel it because we know what it feels like in our mouth, but we don't know what it feels like in our hands to play with our food once it's cooked, right? Touching a cucumber, raw cucumber versus a grilled zucchini. They look similar, but they certainly don't feel the same or taste the same or smell the same. And then sound might seem a bit odd, but ingredients make sounds too, like the snap of an asparagus spear as you break it in half, or the noise that your knife makes while you're slicing through a carrot, for example, or as I mentioned earlier, sizzling chicken on the barbecue next door. Okay, so let's take a moment to try this mindful eating activity. This is something, again, that I practiced quite a lot when I was first starting out. And I do this occasionally just to remind myself of the experience because mindful eating is a practice, just like yoga is a practice, just like meditation is a practice. So every once in a while, we get away from it and then we have to bring ourselves back. Now, this particular practice involves eating a raisin, but if you want to try it with me, you can try it with a cracker or a piece of bread or anything that you have on hand. Now, in the example I'm going to give now, I'm going to use a raisin. So you can start by placing a couple of raisins in your hand and then start exploring them with all of your senses. Scan them, explore every millimeter like you've never seen a raisin before, right? Look at it closely and it'll be a new experience. See how they're different in texture and size and shape. Pass it around your fingers. Notice the colors, the folds, where the surface reflects light or where it's darker. And then put it by your nose so you can smell it. Does it have a put it by your ear and oops, sorry, I switched slides. Put it by your ear and maybe squeeze a raisin or two to see, does it make a sound? And then gently put it into your mouth. At this point, you may notice that you're producing saliva, that your mouth is watering because digestion doesn't start when you put food in your mouth. It starts when you're thinking about food. It starts when you see it, when you smell it, when you hear it. So that's why using your senses is so important in order to get that to trigger. Like think of your digestive system as just one long assembly line, and your brain is the on button. So when you see, smell, touch, hear food, it starts your mouth producing saliva, which is so important to start the digestive process before it moves into your stomach in the next step. And remember, this can only happen when you're in the rest and digest state. When you're eating in a rush or mindlessly, your brain doesn't have an opportunity to get that process started. You're eating without enough saliva, which means that your stomach is not making enough hydrochloric acid, which means that your gut is not ready to receive food and your accessory organs are not ready to produce enzymes that are needed to break down food. So for all the whole digestive process, it's so imperative that we are in that rest and digest state. Now you've put the raisin into your mouth and play with it in your mouth. Just roll it around on your tongue without biting it. Feel it. What does it feel like rolling around? Feel the different textures. Does it have any flavor? And then when you're ready, bite down on the raisins and maybe notice how it goes from one side of your mouth to the other. And while you're biting down, now it's releasing flavors. Slowly chew it, being aware of how much saliva is in your mouth, how the flavors change from one part of your tongue to another, and how they change the longer you chew, the longer it's in your mouth. You'll notice that the flavors get sweeter as digestion is happening right in your mouth and sweeter flavors are released. And then when you're finally ready to swallow, make it an intention. Notice the intention to swallow and try to experience the sensation of swallowing the raisin. Feel it as it moves down your throat into your esophagus on its way to your stomach. Whenever you get a chance, try this. And again, anytime you can, practice it once a week, once a month, once a year. It's a pretty cool exercise to do. Okay, take your time, eat slowly, devote at least 5 minutes to eating before you move on to something else. And it helps to take smaller bites. It's easier to taste your food when your mouth isn't full, when you're taking smaller bites. Also, if you can, put down your utensil between bites to give yourself more of an opportunity. Because if your fork is ready by your mouth while you're already chewing one bite, you're not chewing long enough. And chewing thoroughly is very, very important. Again, for all those reasons we just talked about, so you can experience all those different sensations. Your body's going to process that food more and better and more thoroughly, and you're going to get more nutritional value from it. Chewing is an important step in digestion. The more you chew, you're doing mechanical breakdown right in your mouth. So the more work your mouth does, the less work the rest of your system has to do. Now, you don't have to chew each mouthful 20 times or 25 times like we were told when we were kids, obviously, especially if it's something that doesn't require a lot of chewing. But if it's meat or something that does need more thorough chewing, take that extra time. Now, this is a really interesting exercise when you want to eat really beautiful, tasty dessert. Have you ever noticed this? The first few bites are unbelievable. It's an explosion in your mouth, flavor, pleasure. But by the time you've gotten to the fourth bite or the fifth bite or the sixth bite, it's not an amazing taste experience, right? The first few bites were the best. So I like to do this once in a while if I'm going to eat a cake, like a birthday cake or something. I'll have a few bites, love it, put it away, and then re-experience those amazing flavors a little while later. So I get to stretch out that experience, and it's 100% of an experience instead of 100% for the first four bites and then, 30% for the rest. It's important too to listen to your body and recognize when you're satisfied versus when you're full. Again, early in my experience and journey towards better health and better digestion, this is something that took me, I really struggled with this. And I have to be honest, it probably took me about 6 months to recognize the difference between being satisfied and full. Now, some of this goes back to when I was a kid. I had a very fussy sister who didn't want to eat anything. And it was a battleground at the dinner table every single night. So, wanting to be the good daughter, and I was well rewarded for it, I ate everything on my plate. And in fact, because I ate everything on my plate and I was so efficient about it, I usually got some extra food, which is why I gained weight when I was a child. And a lot of that was, again, just wanting my parents' approval. My sister and I have had so many conversations about this over the year, and now both of us have very balanced eating attitudes. But at the time, it was a real struggle. So, from that experience, I learned to eat until I was full every time. So, unlearning that was so challenging for me, and I see it with my clients. There's people are still doing it. Parents are still doing this, and we're rewarding our kids with dessert all the time, right? When you think about it, the food, our dinner is where the meal is the reward, and the dessert is the punishment when you consider what it's actually doing to our health. So we want to be really careful with the messaging that we're teaching our kids, and to consider the messaging that you learned and that you grew up with, that you were raised on. Does it still apply to you now? Does it make sense to you? Okay, so keep in mind that it takes 20 minutes before your stomach and your digestive system can message your brain that you are no longer hungry. Not that you're full, that you're no longer hungry. Now, think about how much food you can pack away in a 20-minute period. Tons, right? So much food. So no wonder we're eating till we're overfull when we're eating that quickly. So the slower you eat, the more opportunity your digestive system has to communicate with your brain that you can stop eating and that you're satisfied. I realize that we don't often have 20 minutes to sit down and eat a meal, except maybe at dinner time. And I would think that dinner is actually the most important meal to take your time at, because your digestion is not very robust at the end of the day. You've been working all day or running around doing things. You're tired. You've used up your good digestive enzymes, and we tend to have the weakest digestion at the end of the day. So that's the perfect time to really slow down and take that time. And when you're doing that, you start tuning into your body. You're listening. You're listening to hear that signal that you are satisfied. Remember, on the hunger scale, your stomach is 80% full rather than 100% full. So, like I said, take your time. Don't pressure yourself, because it takes a while to figure this out, but eventually you'll get there. Okay, and the last step that I want to talk about is creating or cultivating a mindful kitchen, because the concept of mindful eating goes beyond just eating at every single meal. It also encompasses how your food affects the planet, and how you shop, how you prepare your food. So let's start with your shopping list, considering obviously, better quality, high quality foods, ideally organic whenever possible, or non GMO whenever possible, nutrient dense foods that provide the most bang for your buck. So you aren't eating empty calories. You're not just eating for the sake of eating or fullness, but you're eating in order to nourish every single cell of your body. So when you're making a shopping list and when you're grocery shopping, let's hope that about at least 80% of those items on your shopping list are nourishing foods. And fill your cart with foods from the produce section and avoid the center aisles whenever possible. We already know this, right? Having a mindful kitchen means taking care of your space, cleaning up, especially after each meal, being careful about what you're bringing into your kitchen, making sure you're not spreading bacteria around, making sure you have healthy foods out in the open so that if you have other people that you're living with or for yourself, because you remember out of sight, out of mind, right? So if you've got the fruit out in a bowl, it'll get eaten. When it's visible, we tend to eat it. And I notice this with my children as well. They're teenagers now, but if I cut up fruits or veggies and put them out on the table, they are gone. If they're sitting in the fridge waiting for someone to come and eat them, they sit there until I pull them out and cut them up. Okay. Also, when you're choosing foods, think about things like sustainably produced, sustainably raised animals, supporting local farmers, or shopping at farmers markets whenever possible. And then when you're cooking, cook with love. Oh, easier said than done, right? Because we have to cook pretty much every single day, multiple times a day. It is a heck of a lot of work. So if we can reframe a little bit, change our attitude, have a more positive attitude towards cooking, and then enjoying the experience, do what you have to do. Put on some nice music, maybe dim the lighting, paying attention to the preparation of your food, and again, using all your senses to prepare that meal when you have an opportunity. It's going to help create a more positive and a more beautiful eating experience and will help you connect with your food a little bit more. So mindful eating, as I mentioned earlier, it's a practice and it takes practice. At first, it can feel like a lot of effort and it can be a bit frustrating. So, to start, maybe pick one meal a week to focus on the points that we talked about today. And then maybe, one meal every few days and maybe one meal a day, whatever you're comfortable with. And once you have the hang of it, it just becomes more natural. It becomes a part of you. And then you can focus on implementing these habits into other meals. And again, we embrace it and then we move away from it because life happens, right? So then you embrace it again, and it's back and forth. But that's why it's called a practice. It takes practice. Habits take time, and they involve changing the neurochemistry in your brain. So this isn't going to happen in a day or so. This takes several attempts, several weeks, several months, even. Here's the list of some of the tips that we talked about today: avoiding distractions while we're eating, breathing, 3 deep breaths, or taking a moment to express some gratitude before you eat, using all of your senses: sight, smell, sound, taste, texture, feel, taking your time, putting your utensil down, checking in to see if you're still hungry, if you've eaten enough, if you think you can stop, really listening to your body. And again, this takes time too, so be gentle with yourself. And then finally, cultivating a mindful kitchen. Okay, so I hope that you picked up a few good, helpful tips today that you might be able to take with you after this seminar. Please feel free to sign up for our monthly newsletter, and there's a blog on our website too. So if you're interested in reading some really interesting articles on nutrition or anything related to nutrition and diet and how the body is associated with nutrition, check out our blogs. We've got lots of great articles in there. Every month we send out a really exciting newsletter. The next one is going to be so fun. Actually, we talk about Heather. Is this the one where we have articles on the armpits and different scents that come out of your armpits?
I
Is this the
believe
one?
it is.
Yeah. It's a little bit of a departure from what we usually produce in the newsletter, but there's more research going into the armpit microbiome. So, hey, let's talk about it, right? All right. Thank you so much for being here today. I'm going to open the floor to any questions. And if you need to, wonderful afternoon and a wonderful weekend. Thank you. Okay.
Thanks. Bye-bye, everybody.
Thanks, everyone. Take care.